Bob Darr, and I'm an alcoholic. I would like to kind of congratulate Mary Kay. She's had great speakers this month, and as normal, we can't be good all the time, so, so she screwed up and has me for tonight. Whatever. I am really privileged to be here. Had somebody visit me and sitting over there in my chair, and he says, if you're going to lie tonight, at least make it humorous. Now, the problem is that there's a bunch of people in this room that belong to my home group who have heard an awful lot of what I'm all about and whatever, so I'm not even going to be able to lie, so it's probably not going to be very humorous at all. In any case, format obviously is, talk about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I don't have a big drunkalogue, but I think I belong here. I started drinking. My first drunk was at 11 years old. My brother got married, and we had a wedding reception, and had a lot of beer, and nobody's paying any attention to me, and I got shit-faced and then puked, and then drank some more, and puked some more, and all that kind of good stuff. My dad really raised hell with me the next day, but he wasn't paying much attention to me while I was doing it. And where I lived in northern Ohio, a small little town called Fremont, drinking was kind of the way in which you lived. All through high school, as an example, big football town. They've had 5 All-Americans come out of that little town, 1 Heisman Trophy winner. I mean, the whole cotton-picking area was football-oriented, and with football, you drank beer all the time. And I played football in high school. I wasn't that good, but I played. And as an example, the start of the fall season, we had a beer party sponsored by the Booster Club, managed by people like my father and a whole bunch of other fathers. And the whole team got together on a Friday evening. We all got drunk as hell as 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, and whatever. Puked our brains out the next morning as we went off to practice and whatever. At the end of the season, we had another beer party that lasted 2 days for, again, 15, 16, 17-year-olds, whatever. That was kind of what happened with in the little town that I grew up in. No big deal, right? We all did it. Typical story. Everybody did it, so I did it. Well, we all did it. And I went off to college and got even more into it. And now I'm getting into some really good stuff like White Lightning and all of that good stuff. Problem with my particular drinking career is that in the early days, the more I drank, the meaner I got, the nastier I got, the more successful I became. And I went through about 15 years of drinking very, very heavily, and I got promoted and promoted and promoted and promoted, and I'm making damn good money and raising hell with my family and with everybody else and all this kind of stuff, but it was no big deal, because damn it, that's what I do, and I'm damn good at what I do. And then everything went to hell. I worked for a whole number of companies. One of them, in the first part, Whirlpool Corporation. I did very well, worked for them for about 11 years, and got promoted, and then I got real smart, started sending out resumes, and I jumped from one company to the other, to the other, to the other. So I'm not getting any kind of real relationship with the companies. All I'm doing is making more money and having more fun and doing whatever. And it finally caught up with me. I'm sending out resumes, and people now are checking in on who I am and what I've been about, and nobody's hiring me. And then I get fired. And then I find a lesser job and I get fired. And I get a lesser job and I get fired. Which brings me up to the time that I finally hit bottom. But some things happened that I think are important. I had wonderful parents, great parents. I was brought up not religiously, but spiritually in that household. And I had a God in my life early at that time. And like many of us, my God was, my God was a forgiving God, but not too much. He's holding me accountable. And quite frankly, I didn't give a damn. I still have that basic religious aspect of my life and all of that kind of stuff. But what I know is that nothing that I had back then in terms of my Catholic upbringing and my Catholic education and all of that had really nothing to do with who I became. Okay? I don't blame them for anything. What I found out in that religion, quite frankly, was that there's a right and a wrong. And I believed that if it was wrong and you behaved that way, you were going to pay a price. I quite frankly still believe that. But I also believed then, and I believe today, that if you straighten it up and whatever, you can be forgiven and you can go on about your life. In any case, I'm in the deep throes of my disease, and my home life was going to shit. My wife was ready to divorce me. I got 3 children. She got into Al-Anon, so I've been abused by Al-Anon. She got in. She found out all the good ways of not supporting me and doing all that kind of stuff, and she's dragging the kids away from me. And I know if I keep going with this, divorce is going to happen. And I quite frankly didn't give a damn if I lost her. I didn't want to lose the kids. We had a death in the family, and my brother, who was living in California at that time, he and his wife came to the funeral in Northern Ohio. And my wife and I went to the funeral, and we're there at a wake on the afternoon, and we're going to take a break and come back later in the day. And I said to Charlie, let's go get a drink. He said, tell you what, he said, I'll meet you back at the hotel. He said, there's something I want to talk to you about. Now, Charlie and I, when Charlie was drinking, we did some pretty damn horrible kinds of damn things. He was a 23-year Marine. He was tough as hell, nasty as hell, and all that kind of stuff. And I fell right in there, and we did a bunch of really, really bad stuff. Anyhow, he wants to talk to me. So I meet him at the hotel. And what does he do? He tells me his story. He'd been in AA for a year. And he told me his story. Now, this is the best friend in my life, my brother. And that son of a bitch is telling me that I need to quit drinking. He gave me a big book that night, and he handed it to me, and I threw it at him. Okay. Anyhow, that was the end of that, and I didn't speak to Charlie for another year. He really pissed me off, and my friend, and obviously with what's going on, I'm losing friends, The only people I can keep up with are people at the bars and whatever, and fights and arguments, and I didn't have any friends, really, and my best friend is now gone. Son of a bitch, not drinking. Yeah. Anyhow, this is going on and on and on, and finally with losing the jobs and no friendships and all this kind of stuff, and my behavior I know is really bad, and I'm going to lose my kids, I thought, well, maybe I ought to do something. But I didn't. I now have a job recruiting doctors. I'm sitting in an office on the telephone calling doctors all around the country to go to such places as maybe Candor or whatever. These guys are coming out of medical school and all of that. And God, it's a terrible job for me. And I'm sitting there cussing and swearing and whatever, and it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I decide to hell with this. And I got my stuff kind of together on my desk, and my boss comes over, and she said, what are you doing? I said, I'm going up to the 44th floor, and I'm going to get drunk. She said, if you leave, you're fired. I said F you, and off I went to the 44th floor. Okay, I got up there and I can remember about an hour, and I'm drinking martinis and, whatever, and I go into a blackout. Next thing I know, it's 11:30 that night, and I'm back sitting at that desk. Don't know how I got into the place. I don't know anything about that. But all the stuff that I had worked on is in boxes and laying up against the wall. And I'm on the phone. Guess who I'm talking to? AA. Have no idea how that happened in my blackout. Don't know how the hell I got the telephone number. Don't know anything about it, but I'm talking to AA. And the gal said, "Where are you?" I told her. She said, "There'll be a guy by the name of Mike. He'll be over here in about probably 20 minutes to a half hour." She said, "Come down to the building, come down on the street and wait for him. He'll be there." Okay, so I went down, stood on the street. Mike shows up. Mike takes me over to a all-night coffee shop kind of place and told me a story. And while he's telling me his story, I am already into my throes of yeah, but. And I'll get a little bit more into that as I go on. In any case, Mike tells me his story. We were there till almost 3:30 in the morning. And whatever. He sets me up to go to a meeting the following night and tells me there'll be a guy there by the name of Roland. And I'll get a hold of Roland. Roland will meet you there tomorrow night. And actually that night. But in any case, he said, "I hope you'll show up." Okay, so I went home, and I don't have a job anymore. I don't need to get up. I didn't get up. I slept till, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Got up. My wife's not speaking to me. The kids are gone. They're in school. And all of that. And I kind of got myself together, and I go to the meeting. Okay. And I drive up, and I'm there way early, and I am parked out as far as I can from that church. And huge church, I didn't know it, but a huge conference room in the basement and all that kind of stuff. And these people are showing up. And damn, gorgeous gals, beautiful women. I'm going, hell, I'm in the right place, And then I looked out there, and there's a little guy standing who's the greeter, standing out in the parking lot. And Rich is all of about 5'4". He's got a striped shirt on, plaid pants, Birkenstocks, and a ponytail that comes all the way down to his rear end. And I'm looking at this strange looking man, because I'm sitting way out there and I can see him, right? And he's doing some strange things as far as I'm concerned. Every guy that came up there he hugged. And every gal that came up there he shook hands with. I'm going, if that son of a bitch touches me, I'm going to deck his ass. Right? So finally I get out of the car and I head up there, and Rich is standing there, and here I'm coming, and he goes, "Oh shit, first meeting, right?" I had this set on my face that he saw that, I am so screwed up and I'm new and whatever. He knew it immediately. And he said, "First meeting, right?" "Yep." He said, "Just go on in and ask somebody for Roland." I didn't tell him I was going to meet with Roland, but that's what he said. So I go in there, and Roland is sitting there, and I go over and sit down next to him and said, "I was told to find you." He said, "Okay." He said, I've heard about your last night." He said, "Just hang in here with me, and after the meeting, let's talk." So I'm sitting there, and I don't want to be there, and I don't like the people that are in there, and I'm hearing this crap, as people shared, talking about a power greater than themselves, all of this kind of stuff. Oh, Christ, I'm in some kind of a religious meeting, and I don't want to be here. But I sat there. The meeting is over, and Roland, like we know how to do, told me a story. Okay. And immediately upon him telling me his story, I am already making all the exceptions to what he is telling me. You know, as an example, the way this thing works for us is that we have these meetings and we go to a lot of meetings. Okay. And my answer is, oh, that's great for some of you folks, but, you know, and here we go. And everything that Roland told me that night was yeah, but. At the end of the meeting, he said, okay, what are you doing tomorrow morning? Nothing. He said, we get together and have breakfast almost every morning. It's me, it's Rich, my little short friend, whatever. And as it turned out, another guy in the program who came into the program in 1940 in Akron. Okay, and he knew, I'd come to find out, he knew all the players and knew all the stuff and whatever. And so that next morning, he came and picked me up, and I went to breakfast. And I'm listening to this bullshit going across this table of all this stuff, you know, and whatever. And then Roland took me, he had a little printing company, took me with him to the printing company, and I spent the whole day with him. He's working, and I'm, you know, just kind of hanging around and watching stuff going on. And man, I really do not like my life, and I don't like where the hell this is going. Whatever. Anyhow, this went on for almost 6 months. Roland would pick me up, or Rich would pick me up, or Walter would pick me up, and we go to breakfast and spend the whole day together and go to a meeting at night. And through all of that crap, I was just yeah, but. And what I found out and what I was seeing in all of these meetings is these people were happy. They seemed to be content and all of that. And I'm not drinking. And my life is going to hell. I'm getting angrier and nastier and meaner. You know, I don't know why those three guys put up with me, but they did. But there I went. Obviously, I wasn't doing a damn thing as it relates to this. I wasn't doing anything about this program. About 6 months into this thing, I decided, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to rewrite the book. You know, because I think it's crap. So I quite frankly succeeded in rewriting chapter 5. It was good stuff, man. I had these 12 steps down to 5. Okay? And by God, there was no God in it either. None of that higher power crap, you know, because that was crap to me. Whatever. And I started to tell everybody that I had rewritten the book and I was going to give it to them and explain it to them and give my lecture and all this. And Walter said to me, he said on the day he was going to pick me up, he said, "Can I see your stuff?" Well, sure. Hell yes. You know, you're a big guy in this program, so of course. So I met with Walter at his house. He took me out to his house. I went out on the deck in the back, and he's got a fire pit there. I gave him all my stuff. It was a stack of papers like this. Man, that's pretty good stuff. That's really interesting. The SOB burned. Chapter 5. Okay. And even with all of that, now I'm angrier and getting more. I mean, I am so screwed up with life and all that kind of stuff, and I'm starting to get suicidal. My home life is getting no better. She's not divorcing me. The kids are having nothing to do with me. And my whole life was going to hell. I couldn't get a damn job and all that kind of stuff, and I'm getting more suicidal and more suicidal and more suicidal. I was in the program. I was at the program for 13 months, and it's Thanksgiving Day, 1981, and I'm laying on the floor at my house watching football, and my wife is working her fanny off getting Thanksgiving dinner together. The 3 kids are around and whatever, and The football game wasn't even going my way. In any case, she says over the divider, she said, "Would somebody please give me some help?" And I went off. And I got up and I walked into the kitchen. I grabbed a chair, slammed it into the wall, busted it all to hell. I opened up cabinet drawers, got out stacks of dishes and smashed them on the floor. I don't know what else I did, but a whole bunch of smashing and doing this and whatever. And I stormed out of the house. At that time, I had a little farmette out in the country, and I went out there, and I'm out there, and I'm screaming, and I'm kicking bales, and I'm screaming, and I'm crying, and whatever, and trying to put together how the hell I was going to kill myself that night. You see, this coward, he had kind of thought about this whole business of suicide. I didn't own a gun. I thought, well, the only way that I know how to do it is to take my car and hit a bridge. And on a number of occasions, I got in the damn car, got out on the highway, got up to 110, whatever, heading toward the bridge. And I knew damn well I was going to hit that bridge and I was going to be a paraplegic the rest of my life and be in more suffering. And that's what was going on in my head. I've got to find a way to end this. I got to end it. My wife, after all of my crap at home, she called Roland. And Roland shows up out of the farmette. And he walks in the damn door. And I told him to get the hell out of there. Get away from me. And he kept saying, "You want to go to a meeting? You want to talk?" No. And I got up in his face, and he didn't back up, but he was there. Let's talk. You know. How about going to a meeting? Hell no. Get out of here. He said, "Okay, just give me a minute. I'll be back." He goes out in his car and he comes back in with a fifth of scotch. And he took the fifth of scotch and he slammed it on the table. And he said, "You know, the biggest problem with you is that you haven't hit bottom. You're not buying into any of this stuff. It's the yeah but on everything that's going on. And quite frankly, all of us don't know what the hell we can do for you anymore. And this may not be a good idea, but let's try it." So what I want you to do is I want you to drink that. And then drink as much of it as you want and keep going. And when you finally have had enough of it, come on back, we'll be there. And walked out. And I got the bottle and I uncorked the damn thing. And I got it right up there and I'm shaking like crazy and I'm crying and I'm still screaming and I'm still doing all that stuff. And by the grace of God, I didn't drink it. I don't have any other answer for you other than that. And I set it back down. Finally got myself together enough that I got in the car and went home and decided I'm going to go to a meeting. Don't ask me how that ever happened, but that's what I decided to do. And I got sober in St. Louis, and there, what we call the Where and When book was about this thick. I don't know how many hundreds of meetings were there. And I decided I don't want to see anybody that I know. I'm going to find a meeting in here where, you know, I can just go and just be by myself and be quiet for a little bit. So I went through there and I found a meeting in North St. Louis, which is a total black area. Okay, it's out by the airport and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, that's where I'll go. I get in my car and I drive out there. Couldn't find the place originally. I finally found it and walked into that meeting. And who's sitting at the damn table but Roland? Now, I didn't tell my wife where I was going. I didn't tell anybody where I was going. It was me and that book. Okay, and I walk in and there sits Roland. You would think I would have some kind of emotion, but it pissed me off. Whenever I sat down next to him and I said, "How the hell did you know I was coming here?" He said, "I didn't." I said, "Why are you here?" He said, "I wanted a meeting where nobody knew me. and where I could go and I could just be alone by myself as I thought about what's happened today. And I don't know about you folks, but if that isn't God and higher power stuff, I don't know what the hell is. I sat there and cried and cried and cried with the whole idea that this is over. I'm done. I can't do it anymore. And there's something in my life that doesn't want me to do this anymore, that I need to do the right thing. God, whatever. After the meeting, I went out with Roland, and we sat in his car, and he said, okay. He said, now let's really do it. Let's really do it. He said, you know, you've been going to a lot of meetings, okay? You haven't been praying, you haven't been studying, you haven't learned, you haven't heard anybody else's story, you haven't done any of this. Let's try it a different way. That was the start of my sobriety. Well, I have a sobriety date. It's 13 months earlier than that. That's actually my sobriety date. That's the day I got into this program and got into it. And the next 3 or 4 months were tough as hell. I was committed to this whole business of sobriety, and I was committed to shut up, which is not my thing, right? And they worked with me, and they worked with me, and people like all of you sitting in these rooms, you know. I want to back about 6 months into this thing. What I used to do in meetings is I'd be sitting here and something would be going on, and I had a yeah but that they all needed to hear about, and I'd stand up and I'd lecture you folks in terms of what was wrong with what was just said, whatever. And I had a guy who was sitting across from me one night, and he stood up too, as I stood up, and he interrupted me, okay? He said, we are so goddamn sick and tired of you, okay? What I suggest you do is you sit down and shut the hell up or get the fuck out. Roland reminded me of that night, okay? Just one other add-on in terms of that day when the guy told me to get the hell out. As I left that night, I think there was at least 5 people, there may have been 6 or 7, I don't know. But they were back there and they said, keep coming back. I mean, here I am with all the negativity, all of the anti-program, anti-AA, anti-God, whatever, making a damn fool out of myself. And those people in the back of the room said, keep coming back. So there I am with Roland that night at that meeting. And we're talking about this stuff. And he's not saying you have to do, you have to do, you have to do. What he kept saying is, let's try it. Let's try it. Just accept some things if you can. And if you can't, let's talk about it. But let's try it. That to me is a 40-year experience in this program for me. To tell you that I have been sober for 41 years is a lie. I have not drank in 41 years. And I've had periods of time, and Chuck is sitting back here who can kind of relate to this story. When we moved here, I went to a couple of meetings, didn't like them. I mean, I'm okay with my program, but I didn't like them. And what was going on in my head was, you know, I've been sober now 15 years. I don't need this stuff all the time, you know. So I quit going to meetings. And I didn't go to meetings for 10 years. And I didn't drink for 10 years, for those 10 years. And guess what? Bob is right back into that same behavioral shit and the same stuff in his head that I had when I first stopped. You know. I was at work one day, and a guy came up to me and he said, do you drink? I said, no. You belong to AA? I said, kind of. He said, I suggest you get your ass back to meetings. Now, what's interesting is this guy is not in this program. But he had some experience. So I drove down here. I got, I don't know, Chuck, what was it, 2 o'clock or whatever it was. I pulled up here in the parking lot. There's no cars here. And Chuck is coming out the door. And I said to him, is this where AA meets? And he said, yeah. And he gave me the schedule of meetings and all of that kind of stuff. We chatted just for a minute. But think of that, you know. I was thinking as I got here and there was nobody here, you know, yeah, I saw one truck out there, his. And I thought, well, you know, maybe I don't need to come back. And there he is, and part of that service work that we all understand that really helps us and does stuff, there he was. And with that, just that little small thing that he did in being here, said, yeah, I better come back. I better come back. I need it. So anyhow, at the end of that, I walked in that night through that door down there. And who's sitting over here where AJ's sitting is my buddy Gordon, Brent Gordon. I've got a Notre Dame hat on. He's got his Boston College hat on. And typical Brent, he yelled at me, "Hey, asshole, come over here!" You know. So I sat there and with him, and you know, he had, I don't know, 28, 29 years at that time, something like that. And I've got more time than he's got, except, as I said, whatever. And here he goes with the typical kind of thing that we need to do and that we're responsible for. Told me his story, I shared with him mine, and he kind of kicked my rear end and said, okay, you know, let's do it again. Let's start again. Let's get at it. Whatever. Took me to some meetings. Didn't take me, but met me at meetings. Got me into the Carthage group. All that kind of good stuff. And here we go. My story is I think, relatively weird. I don't have a big drunk-a-log. But I'll tell you what, folks, I belong. Because I've been through that misery and that hell in my head and all of that kind of crap with suicidal stuff and all of the cheating and all that crap that went on when I was doing my thing, right? And I got into this program and then came back into this program, and what a hell of a life this is. And what I know about this stuff is that as Brent said to me many, many times, this program works if you work it. And then he would always add, but it doesn't if you don't. And that recollection of all of this time that I just told you all about, this program works for this drunk when he works it. When he goes to the meetings, when he shares, when he works with another alcoholic, when he prays, when he works on the steps, when he does stuff, when he takes inventories and whatever, I got a hell of a good life. And when I don't do that, I slide right back into that same bullshit again that is so distasteful to me. And yet I'll do it. I'm human. I've got a disease that tells me I don't have it. I've got all that kind of garbage inside this body. And what I have to do, and what I know I have to do, and what I really, really enjoy doing is to work this program. To work this program. Been in some really, really neat meetings just here recently. Last night, a friend of mine sitting here in this room tonight kind of went off in his own thing because he had a guy that he knows and likes fairly well who went back out. Okay? And I didn't go back out, but I went back out. And I know what the hell that hell is all about. Maybe not as bad as going back out and drinking again, but I've got a great life when I do this thing right. And when I do it right. And it's almost like a salvation kind of thing to me. When I do this thing, and I pay attention to these steps, and I, practice these principles in all my affairs, and when I do it, damn, it's a great life. I look around this room, and there's a whole bunch of people in here that I know. And what's beautiful about it is that I know that they love me. And I know that I have in my own being that opportunity and that real satisfaction of loving all of you. I went through a long period of time drinking. And other than my own self-satisfaction and stuff, there wasn't anybody that I really loved. In retrospect, as I went through that the latter part of my drinking, I didn't love my wife, I didn't love my kids, I didn't love life, I didn't like any of this shit. You know, it was just me. And the beautiful thing about this program, and we hear it all the time, is that I can't do this alone. And you know what? I don't want to. This is where I live today, in this program. I do it all the time. And then every once in a while I'll slip and get sloppy and don't do my prayers and don't do this and don't do that. And I get that gut back again, where it starts to hurt, where it starts to be very uncomfortable. The point behind all of that for this drunk is that I know this program works for this drunk. And I see it in the room and see people in this room that I love, and I know it's working for them too. And I can be a part of that. And for that I'm so grateful. Thank you all.